Hello everyone and welcome back to another video from the Tiny Menagerie. The Hyphosobrocan genus of fish contains about 140 odd different species, and for the group this one is a bit of a biggie. If you're looking for a fish that has the menacing presence of a piranha without the need for a 1,000-litre tank and is an awful lot prettier to look at as well, then the Colombian Tetra just might be the fish for you. But what do they like to keep and what kind of setup do they need? Well, Colombian Tetras originally hail from, funnily enough, Colombia, where they can be found in huge shoals in clear but often overshadowed and densely vegetated waters. And in order to get the most out of these colours, you will want to replicate that habitat as closely for them as you can. In particular, they are essentially a grey base-coloured fish that has a blue sheen over their scales. And in order for that to really shine, they do need to be above a dark substrate with moderate lighting, as over either a very pale substrate or in very bright conditions, they often look washed out, as they are trying to match their surroundings. In fact, this might go some way to explaining why Colombians don't seem to have the popularity of other similar species, like black phantoms or Serpi tetra for example. Colombians are truly beautiful in the right conditions, but in shops, and especially when they're youngsters, they can look really rather drab. They are just a little grey fish with a bit of orange in their fins. And as they don't become sexually mature until they're about 6 months old, which is pretty slow growing for most tetras, it can take them quite a long time to be showing their best, all of which of course adds up to making them just another species that is very easy to overlook compared to their flashier cousins in a shop. It's also worth bearing in mind that despite their looks, these are not the bravest of fish, and they will certainly appreciate dark hiding places and plenty of cover options, be that from plants or hardscape, anything that's going to give them the option to hide, and then if they're given that, conversely they will generally spend more time out in the open. They also really appreciate the presence of ditherfish, as the sight of smaller, presumably more appetising fish out and about signals to them that the coast is clear of predators. When they're kept in a bare tank or one where they are the only fish present and they're in small numbers, they can be absolutely determined hiders, or they will dart away as soon as you go anywhere near their tank, which can be quite frustrating of course if you'd really rather be able to see your fish. Comfortable, mature Colombian tetras though are a delight, and they are well worth the wait even if you can only purchase them as babies. They're an active species that's usually out and about patrolling around the tank. They keep to the middle and lower levels, though they will go up to the surface if they think that there's food there. And while they are very active, Colombians are not a high-energy fish. They don't go dashing about the place and tend to move with certainty and confidence, rather than giving the impression that they've got more energy than they know what to do with. In fact, I might go so far as to describe them as being just a tiny bit menacing in how they move. They have an attitude to them. They do remind you just a tiny little bit of piranhas schooling together looking for food. I suppose being a deep-bodied fish with red fins certainly helps that look. And you will certainly want to keep them in a group, with a minimum of 6 individuals, as they are a very social species, and males especially will put on their best display when they have some girls to show off to. It's worth bearing in mind though that this appearance of an attitude can be a little bit intimidating for very shy species, especially when Colombians are feeding, which they do so in that typical rocketing tetra style where they will zoom about the tank snatching up everything that they can see. This can very easily scare small fish away from food or lead to very shy fish just hiding all of the time, even if Colombians aren't actually all that dangerous themselves. For this reason though, they're best housed with other confident species who can hold their own around the dinner table. Also being on the larger side, with males reaching about 8 cm from nose tip to tail tip, and females only being marginally smaller than that, and being very active as well, then they do of course need a tank that is of a reasonable size, and at the very least should be 100 cm in length, with a mixture of open and sheltered areas. And they're also not hugely fond of fast-flowing water neither. They prefer either very slow flow or none at all, but when it comes to the water itself, Colombians sit in that very typical tropical fish range, preferring a temperature anywhere between 23 and 27 degrees C, and a pH somewhere between 6 and 7.5. although if you are looking to breed them, then that's best to err more on the acidic side. While Colombians don't really show any interest in any other fish, they are quite peppery with each other, and males especially will frequently square off at each other and generally jostle bad-temperedly amongst themselves. But it's worth bearing in mind that when they are either breeding, or if there has been a disturbance within the shoal, then they will fight to establish a pecking order, and these fights can be vicious, enough to see scales flying around. However, while they can be very dramatic, and obviously you will see scales missing from fish afterwards, they never amount to anything serious. I've never seen any fish have any sort of severe damage, not even fin nipping going on, it just seems to be body attack rather than fins. And once all the fighting dies down, peace will once again reign, and in all honesty, this feistiness is one of the major appeals of Colombian tetras. While many tetras are seriously lazy, and that's being polite to them, these guys are eternally entertaining to watch, as they always seem to have some kind of drama going on between them. And in many ways that makes keeping Colombians feel almost more like keeping barbs rather than keeping tetras. They always have the same air of having something to do and somewhere to be and someone to go and pick a fight with about them, though less with the barb intention and more with the tetra cowardice after all. Personally as well, I have never had an issue with them fin nipping either with each other or with other fish. However, this is something that is very well reported about the species, so best not to keep them with other fish that have very soft or long flowing fins. And on the subject of other tank mates, Colombians are not particularly keen hunters, and so they can be kept with adult Neocaridina without any issues, but they would very happily take any shrimplet that gets caught up in the water current, so probably not the best fish to keep with your prized Caridina colonies. When it comes to feeding every day, Colombians are not at all fussy. They will consume pretty much anything that is small enough to fit in their mouths, including any frozen or dried food, flakes or pellets. They're also not very good at finding food once it's landed on the substrate, unless it's something that's really obvious like bloodworms, but they will take food from the surface and also as it drifts past them. And surprisingly, considering their size, they don't actually eat all that much, and they won't feed until they're absolutely stuffed like some species will. This makes it easier to feed everyone when no one species is demanding on taking the lot, but it does mean that if you're keeping mostly Colombian tetras, you will certainly want to have something else in the tank, something down on the substrate that will be hoovering through all of the scraps that are pretty much guaranteed to bypass the tetras. Could that be cories or coolies, for example? Overall though, Colombian tetra are easy to keep. They're hardy once they're established, and well worth it if you can find them for sale. Though you will of course need to have a reasonable sized tank, and also to not mind waiting usually for quite a while for them to grow up, so that you can get the best of their colours. Anywho though, I hope you've enjoyed this little video, all about the Colombian tetra. Happy fish keeping everyone, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye!